In this video, we're going to cover navigation in Blender. If you're opening Blender for the first time, you might actually see a quick setup window that'll look something like this. Don't worry if your image isn't exactly the same as the one you see here. The default settings are perfectly okay, and you can always change these later, so just feel free to click out of that. Once you do, you will be greeted by the main window of Blender, which is the 3D viewport. This is the window right here where you're going to be spending 90% of your time in Blender. So knowing its most crucial functions, as we're about to cover here, is really important. The 3D viewport is where your 3D scene is displayed and where all objects in your scene are located. In order to select different objects in our scene, we can just press left click on them to make them our active selection. So if we press left click on our camera here, it will turn orange and become our active selection. To deselect in the 3D viewport, simply left click any negative space. To select everything in your scene, you can press A, or to deselect everything in your scene, you can press Alt A. So A to select all, Alt A to deselect all. But now let's cover the fun part, which is actually navigating our 3D scene. That means panning and rotating around our 3D viewport. There are two ways of doing this. The first is at the top right of our screen here on this 3D gizmo. If you hold left click on the 3D gizmo, you will orbit around our cube in our scene here. You can also click on any of these axes to snap to its respective view in an orthographic view. By left clicking on the x-axis here, I have snapped my view to the right orthographic view, as I can tell by looking at the top left of my viewport. If I left click on the y in the 3D gizmo, I will snap to the back orthographic view. If I left click on the z, I will snap to the top orthographic view. An orthographic view in 3D is simply a view with no perspective information in it whatsoever. It's a completely flat and shallow version of the 3D space you're looking at. To exit the orthographic view, all you need to do is hold middle mouse button to orbit around our cube once again. Middle mouse button is the way I normally rotate around objects in Blender, just because it's so fast. If you hold left mouse button on this little hand icon, you will move your camera around the 3D space. If you hold Shift plus middle mouse button, you will do the exact same thing, which is what I normally press. So holding Shift plus middle mouse button moves your view, and just holding middle mouse button orbits your view. If you want to look at another object in 3D space, you're going to want to change your orbit center point. To do that, simply change your active selection by clicking on an object, then go to View, Frame Selected. Now, if we orbit by holding middle mouse button, we'll be orbiting around our camera in our scene here. We're a little close to our camera, so we can actually zoom out by using the scroll wheel on our mouse like so. And you can do the exact same thing by holding left click on this little magnifying glass icon at the top right of the 3D viewport. I'm going to make the cube our active selection once again by holding middle mouse to orbit it into our view, pressing left click, and then going to View, Frame Selected. Then I will zoom out once again by using the scroll wheel. The final two icons in our 3D viewport here are this little camera icon and this perspective icon, all of which have hotkeys associated with them. The camera icon lets us snap to the view of our currently active camera object in our scene. So if I click on this, you'll see that we are now seeing our 3D scene through the lens of our camera object. To exit this view, you can just hold middle mouse button, or you can press the shortcut for this, which is numpad 0. Like so. So I'm going to exit our camera view and press the shortcut for this final button, which is the perspective / orthographic toggle. So if I press 5 on my numpad here, which is the shortcut for it, and use middle mouse button to orbit around a little bit here, you'll see that all the perspective in our scene is disappearing every time I toggle this. All the lines become perpendicular and everything starts to look very shallow and flat, which is very useful for certain 3D modeling tasks. I'm going to exit this view by pressing numpad 5, and that about covers it for this video. In the next video, we're going to cover the Blender interface, which is equally as important, so be sure to stick around. And thank you so much for watching this video. It may not seem like it, but you are now one step closer to animation mastery. And if you want access to an exclusive Discord community, exclusive rewards, and help ensure that I can keep making tutorials for you just like this one, check out my Patreon. Link is in the description below.